Hi everybody, if you want to know the value of your home, you are watching the right show. Welcome to What's My House Worth? My name is Rob Ticktin. I own Encompass Residential, real estate brokerage for longtime homeowners. I'm also a builder right here in Needham.
And I'm Ryan McDonnell, an owner of Hawthorne Real Estate. We are builders, we are brokers, and we are also right here in Needham.
All right, well, Holy June, I guess, is the theme for today's show. Lots of action in Needham in the month of June, unprecedented, some might say. So we might as well just jump right in because there's a lot to cover, and certainly a lot of houses that flew off the shelf in the month of June.
How about 64 of them?
64, more than 2 a day.
Yeah, and as you recall from last month, when we were talking about, we were a little surprised at the sort of the flat number of sales in May, and that's because a lot of the homes that were on the market didn't sell in May, or they're under agreement rather, they didn't sell in May, they sold in June. So 64 houses with an average sale price of $819, which is right at that 96% of list price, which is where we like to see it. The average list price of $849, and right on our $310 a square foot as a price per square foot on the sales. So
yeah, it was healthy start to finish. The month started with 7 houses sold on the first day of the month. It closed out with 11 on the last day of the month, and it was just active all the way in between. And I don't think, like you said, it caught anybody by surprise because the inventory of houses that were under agreement was so excessive heading into it that we kind of felt this was bubbling. And June was the time that if you were going to sell your house this year, June was probably the time that you wanted to do it.
Yeah, and I think also what might have attributed to that is we did notice that there were a lot of homes that were under agreement when we did the show, talking about April, talking about May. And then what might be a factor here is the interest rates right now are so low, and the banks are getting flooded not just with purchases but also with refis. So while new purchases tend to go to the front of the line if you're with the banks in terms of priority, having that much business just means it's going to take that much longer to get through underwriting, to go through all the things that need to happen, and that might have been a factor in some of these longer sales cycles for properties closing in June.
Right, and it was a pretty across the board. It wasn't just predominantly houses over $1 million or under $1 million. It was top to bottom. It was healthy. It was good for the town. And as we go from one segment to the next, in between, people will be able to see all the houses that sold, from the not so big seller all the way to the big seller, and kind of through and through a lot of price points got covered.
Yeah, I would say our previous guests were probably pretty busy in June. Insurance, real estate attorneys, home inspectors, I mean, yikes.
Yeah, that's right. Everybody in the real estate business was busy in the month of June, and that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
And so we've also talked about trends, which leads us to the next slide, which kind of shows a little bit about the market direction since really we started doing this. We've been doing this show for 5 months now. This slide that we have on here starts 4 months ago and shows that every month over the last 4 months, we've gone in the right direction. I can't imagine we're going to be able to keep this trend up.
No, I mean July has a lot of ground to cover if we're gonna make June's numbers. But still, it's been a very healthy market. It speaks to all the things that we've been talking about in Needham, about the demand, about when inventory is priced right, and it's where you start to see it all starting to come together.
And you see you kind of see the direction of the slide. Let's talk a little bit about what those actual numbers are, because the numbers aren't on there. But in February, you had 17 sales. This, of course, is always per MLS, single-family homes in Needham. So 17 in March, 28 houses in April, 30 in May, and then the big jump to 64 in June. And that's compared to the June of 2011 was 34. So this wasn't like a typical June either.
We must have had our feet up last June.
That's right. Well, it's because we weren't here getting people excited about the Needham real estate market.
That's true. You're welcome, Needham.
Yeah. So we'll take a little bit of the credit, maybe for 10 or so of the sales. Yeah. But it's been a good ride, a good spring, and winter kind of closed off on a little bit of a bang. If you remember, February was a good month as well.
Yeah, I do.
So things are looking good. We talked a little bit about this June compared to June of 2011. So what we decided to do was take a look at a few of the other previous Junes just to see how June 2012 stacks up. And even if you talk historically over the exact same month as opposed to previous months leading into spring, it stacks up well on that front as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is basically a historic June, is really what it comes down to. We can't say enough about this June.
Yeah, we love June.
Good for you, June.
Yeah. Name my next child June. But the numbers there are 40 for 2008, then 35, and then you see the jump up to 57. So we got close to 64 a couple years ago, but didn't quite get there. And then in 2011, back down to 34, and then boom, right back up to 64 this month. So what do we think that this is going to mean for July? Any predictions or guesses?
Letdown.
A gigantic letdown. I mean, it has to be, right?
Right.
It can't stay like this forever.
No. Plus, we're almost in the middle of July, and some of us may have taken a peek at the numbers.
And can you give us any insight?
We'll wait till next show. I'm not going to. I mean, that's July's show.
All right. Okay. So we're not going to be disappointed necessarily when the numbers are pale in comparison.
Right. You've been warned.
Right. And you've been warned, and you've also been warned that if you've been waiting to sell your home, you probably missed your window, at least as far as 2012 is concerned. Correct?
Well, yeah. Okay.
Right. I mean, you can always sell your home.
Right.
But demand.
I mean, I don't want to take the wind out of everybody's sails here.
Right. Let's just shut her down, get her back going.
We will
and maybe
see you next June.
Next April. So no, I think we've painted a pretty clear picture that June was a good month.
Or we've painted ourselves into a corner.
That's right. All right. So we'll hopefully be able to paint ourselves out, but not before showing the big seller for the month of June. A lot of houses sold, so who gets the big prize? Ryan.
It was 185 Country Way gets the big prize of $1.825 million. It's 4,400 square feet roughly. That gives you 4 bedrooms and 4 plus baths. Just over an acre lot. Was on the market for about 140 days, which is not atypical for a house in this price point. I would say it's actually pretty good.
Yep.
Home was built in 2009, so we like to call it is a young home. A couple things that I noticed in this house that jumped out at me. One being mahogany floors.
Oh yeah,
which
I noticed that
was
as well.
Very, very, very cool. And the other thing that it has is a beautiful outdoor patio with a stone fireplace. It's just great exterior living space. Very, very cool. And a very, very large basement. 1,400 square feet of finished space in the basement that's not included in that 4,400 that's on MLS.
So the floors, I mean, typically what we see is oak flooring. So is it safe to say that anything other than oak flooring can be a draw? Is there any other kind of wood flooring that you don't like to see?
Pine? I wouldn't put pine.
Yeah.
I mean, pine's very soft. I mean, that's not to say pine can't be beautiful.
And
I mean,
it has its own character.
Right. It's just, it depends on what you're looking to get out of it. If you're looking to make a room unique and charming and have a rustic feel to it, a historic pine floor is gorgeous, but it's very soft. It's going to take a beating. The more durable floors that we typically see in construction today, and even back into the the 50s and 60s, is the oak. You'll see some cherry, some mahogany, some walnuts, but oak is by far the most common flooring that you're going to see.
And from a builder's perspective, have you ever done anything other than oak, just to try to differentiate your product?
Yeah, we just had a house where we put in some walnut. Actually, we just had a house we put in some beautiful old pine floors that were taken and restored from an old Victorian. But cherry is very, very nice. Maple, I had maple in my own house. So there's a lot of different ways you could go with it. Mahogany is unique though. You don't see it all the time. It's gorgeous, and it is durable.
It definitely stuck out to me as well. And another thing with regards to the flooring that stuck out to me was the fact that the bedrooms were carpeted, which you don't see very often, especially at this price point, new construction. Some people do like the carpeted bedrooms, but overall, you think it's a safer play going with the hardwood floors in the bedrooms, correct?
I do, well, simply because you can always put an area rug over hardwood floors.
Yep.
So that's probably something that an owner chose when the house was being built. A lot of builders might do it because carpet is a little bit less expensive than hardwood, but I like to go with the hardwood. That way you give the eventual owner the opportunity to put carpet in on their own.
Right, and it's really, at the end of the day, it's not that much less expensive than hardwood floors.
Well, you're right. If you're buying an expensive carpet, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any other observations about 185 Country Way? They described it in the listing sheet as one of the most desirable streets in Needham. Would you agree that it's one of the most desirable, quote unquote, streets in Needham?
One of, sure. Yeah, it's in a unique part of town. This is the side of town where you do have the bigger lots. You have less density. I mean, it depends on your definition of desirable, obviously.
Right. If average selling price is one of them, high average selling price, then that would probably fit the bill, because there have been a lot of homes that have sold in the $1 million and upwards of $2 million range.
Right.
We go from the big seller to the not so big seller, the house that we always have a special place in our heart and always root for.
Yep.
And this month's edition is located on Dedham Ave, if I remember correctly.
It is. It's 391 Dedham Ave. It sold for $315,000 to a developer. It's 1,000 square feet, 3 bedrooms and 1 bath on a large lot, 14,000 square feet. A couple things that jumped out at me about this property, and it actually will take us back to the same conversation applies to the big seller, and it's the topic that we hit every single month. It's pricing. It's your initial list price. I mean, the number that we constantly look at is what was your price as a percentage of list, and we always see that 96, 97%. But what I think is more significant than that is what was your sale price as a percentage of your original list.
Yep.
And in this case, you're at 81%. And the original list price was $387. On our big seller, the original list price was $2.2. They sold at about 83% of original list. And the thing that translates into, when your original list price is too high, you end up usually not even getting that 96, 97% when you go through your reductions. You're going to be below. And this one was at 391 Dedham was 93% of its eventual list price. And had they come out of the box in a better price point, you could make the argument that they would have probably gotten more for the house than 315.
But what we do have the benefit of, which they did not, is hindsight.
Oh, I thought you were going to say wisdom.
Well, I think we all have that.
That's
benefit,
true.
I'd like to think, everybody in the market. But it's easy to say that now. But
Right.
at the time, if you get this listing, you have a lot that's 14,000 square feet. It's hard to imagine a lot in Needham of that size going for a number so low. Now, there were some issues with regards to this lot. Specifically, there's some wetlands on the side of it, which kind of prohibited new construction. That certainly factored in. But sometimes, you try and you take your best guess, but it's not always easy to come out with a perfect listing price.
Right, that's true. And in fairness to, obviously, the seller, the agent, everybody involved, it's not an easy thing to do. But when it just hammers the point home of how important pricing is and objective pricing, and what can happen when you don't hit that number closer to its sweet spot right off the bat. You go through price drops, and you end up eventually selling for a number that might be less than what you would have gotten had you done it.
Right. Nobody's perfect at pricing a home.
No, it's not easy.
It's not. So let's switch over. Not so big seller is in the rearview mirror. Let's look at the featured sale. We did a little bit differently this
Mixing it
month,
up.
Ryan. What do you think about that? The side-by-side featured sales. That's fun.
I like it. We had a lot of activity on Coolidge Ave in the last couple of months.
Yeah, there were 3 homes that sold in Coolidge in
Yeah.
a month, but these two were put side by side because of their similarity. What does that tell you, looking at those two side by side?
Well, the first thing that jumps out at you is Coolidge is one of Needham's ladder streets. So when you talk about, we touched on it before, when you talk about the desirable parts of town, there's people that come in to talk to us about starting a search and saying, "Oh, I want to be on the ladder streets," and these are the ones that basically are between Harris and Great Plain Ave as you drive into town, and they're very desirable. Some of the lots are around the small size. You can see here, 34 Coolidge is under 7,000 square feet. 59 Coolidge is under 10. There's not too many lots on these streets that are over 10,000 square feet, but yet they're very desirable. They're beautiful. They're straight. 34 Coolidge was on the market for only 3 days. Was listed at $839, sold at $833. And then 59 Coolidge, which had the benefit of watching 34 Coolidge, came on at $825 and ended up selling at $802 in about a month. So still didn't take very long on either one of these, and they're similar and they're different. They both have 4 beds. One has an extra bath and a master. Neither one of them have air conditioning, and some of them, and 34 had a little bit more updates in the kitchen, but they're still very similar in a lot of other respects.
Right, and one sold for $370 per square foot. The other one sold for $386. The average sales price per square foot in June, $310, shows how desirable they are.
Right.
Which one, quickly, before we take a look at the market snapshot, which house do you like better? Which buy do you like better?
I think 34 Coolidge was a better buy. Even though they paid more, I think they got a little bit more with respect to 59 Coolidge. They've got an updated kitchen. It's a little bit bigger. I think it was maybe for dollar a better buy.
Okay. We're going to just go straight over to the market snapshot now.
Okay.
Take a look at July, potentially, or what July might look like based on the inventory that's out there now. And the number of houses that are active listings are 117. It's gone down a little bit, but not much, which tells me we might start to see it tick up a little bit.
Yeah, and the one thing to look at is we had 98 homes under agreement at this time last month, and there's only 65 now, which speaks to a lot of the closings that we're seeing in June.
Right, and the average listing price is going up too,
Yep.
slightly, which shows typically the lower the average listing price, probably the faster the turn.
True.
Agreed?
Yep.
Agreed. So the summer months, the picture is shaping up that maybe the things will die down a little bit, but not too
And
much.
that's
we hope,
and that's
right?
typical.
Right.
I mean, July and August are usually pretty slow. I mean, you have a lot of people going away. It's just the home search gets put on hold. The people wait to list their house until maybe after vacations. After Labor Day, we generally see a little bit of an uptake through September and October, and then the holidays approach, and we see it turn down a little bit then.
And the average list price per square foot at $336, keeping in mind $310 has been the magic number, at least this month, with sales price per square foot. So not surprising that you see a variance there at $26 per square foot. What it boils down to is you want to sell your house, you have to lower your price, and in Needham, on average, $310 will get it done. Of course, that varies house to house. We talk about that every month, but that seems to be kind of the magic number, the low 300s,
Yep.
consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Consistently.
Month
Okay.
over month.
Month over month. Okay, so our next step is we are going to show you what sold in June. 64 houses, so take your time, look through them, smallest to biggest, price-wise. Ryan, would you like to give our number if anybody wants to call in? Any questions, anything they want us to cover on the show, please call this number. What is it, Ryan?
It is 781-707-6564.
Again.
781-707-6564.
Okay. I always like to leave it twice, even on voicemails.
Yeah. I can see how that could be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? People take their time. So right after we see what's sold, we are going to have our guest in studio, special guest, Matt Borelli, recently elected selectman. So stick around, don't go anywhere.